Hey everybody, welcome to another video. So in today's video, we are going to be talking about unit traits. So in the recent update as of recording this video, the game now has a few more additional attributes that we are able to modify. Those ones are not highlighted here just to show which ones are new and which ones have been around before. But this one here, ATTR traits, is the one we're going to be focusing on for this video here. So to figure out what traits are, we can hop over to the Advanced Unit Editor. And I'm going to, in the Units tab, I'm going to put a filter on trait, which is that specific attribute. So if I say, look around here, most units in the game have no traits whatsoever. And if I want to filter by a unit that does have a trait, I can do something like this. I can say A1. So this shows us everything that has a trait attribute of 1. And that's over here. So the trait attribute is shown in this box here, and it will change depending on what happens to be checked in these boxes. So they can be stacked on top of each other, but more on that later. Now, if we look at all of the units here that have a trait attribute of 1, we can ask ourselves, what do these all have in common? And the answer is that these are able to garrison units inside of them. And if we hover over this box here, we can see that that corresponds with garrison unit. So let's try and put this into an example here. So right now on this map, I have a lake. So in this lake, what I want to do is I want to put a canoe in there. So if we look at a canoe is just a generic warship, but I want to change it into a transport type unit. So let me grab the ID for canoe is 778. So we'll go over to the test map. Say canoe is 778. And in order to modify the canoe, I say effect amount, set attribute canoe, and then I want to modify the attribute ATTR traits. Now I want to set the value to 1, so it can be a garrison type unit. But then also I have to make sure that it has some sort of garrison capacity, and that was already an attribute for us to use. Garrison capacity is over here, so I'm going to modify the garrison capacity also and set it to the value of 1, so it can carry 1 unit at a time. And now to put that unit into the map, it's going to do create object canoe, set place for every player, find the closest point, which is terrain to place on water, and also ignore terrain restrictions. So we can see that our canoe now has a garrison capacity of 1. And if I want to garrison my eagle into this, it doesn't seem to be working. So even though that trait attribute has been set, we also have to be aware of the abilities of the unit that we're trying to garrison. So if I take a look at an Eagle Scout, we can see that it has the ability to garrison in some units. It has the ability to garrison in transport boats, buildings, and siege weapons. And since our canoe is a class 22 object, that means an eagle does not have the ability to garrison in this class of unit. So what if I upgraded it from something with a transport class? So I will filter by class, and a transport ship class is C20. So if I upgrade unit 545 into a canoe, let's see if that does anything different. If I say effect amount upgrade unit, I want to upgrade a transport ship into a canoe. And now, since the canoe is now occupying the unit index of the transport ship, I'm going to replace that over here and replace that down here also. So now that this canoe has the unit class of a transport ship, I can now garrison inside of it. Now obviously the canoe doesn't have an unload command like the transport ship does, but just a generic ungarrison command can eject the Eagle Warrior, and that works pretty well. Now, the unfortunate limitation of this is there is only one unit in the game that has a transport ship class, and that's the transport ship itself. So by doing something like this, we make it so we wouldn't be able to make transport ships if we had another type of transport unit. However, we don't necessarily need to use a transport ship class, since Eagle Warriors also have the ability to garrison inside siege weapons. So if I filter by class 13 instead of class 20, maybe we can find an unused siege weapon unit that we can use in place of the transport ship. So for that, I'm going to use the siege tower, which is 885. And that is a different unit than the siege tower 1105. See, this is the one that can hop over walls and the one that's able to be built in the game. This one is just a beta unit, so I'm going to use this. So back in the script, I'm going to set up another unit. Siege weapon is 885, right? So if I upgrade, so wherever I have transport ship now, I'm going to just replace that with siege weapon. And let's see what this does. So we can see that since Eagle Warriors have the ability to garrison inside siege weapons, that this works. But even though siege towers themselves would normally have the ability to garrison inside transport ships, they do not have the ability to garrison inside siege weapons, so we are not able to put a siege tower into this canoe. And I would be very concerned if we could, because this thing is huge and this canoe is very small. Now, it's a fair question to ask. Let's go back to the transport ship. When we're looking at the transport ship, why didn't this unit show up when we were filtering by trait equals 1? And that's because trait equals 1 is technically enabled here, but it's also combined with trait index 2, which is a ship unit. And that's how traits can be combined. See, this flag value is 1, this flag value is 2, and when you combine those, the flag value is 3. And then this next flag value would be 4, so if I check this, it would add 4. If I check this, it would add 8, and so on. Now, on to trait number 2. So trait number 2 is just something that all ships have. I cannot find anything special happening when this is applied to a non-ship unit, but it's just there for reference. But now onto trait number 4, and we can see that the only units that are showing up here when we have filtered by trait number 4 are the surgeons. And what's special about surgeons is that they are the only military unit that can build something. So this trait is I assume, what enables surgeons to build buildings. But in terms of modding this, it's not really super useful for us because this also has to be combined with either the build or repair ability for a particular unit. And that's not something we can mod through RMS. And even if we were, most units don't have a working graphic that would make it so they look like they're building something. But that's also one of those things that's helpful to know. And now next, we have the interesting one, trait number 8. And we can see that when we filter by trait number 8, we see that the only units that are showing up here are the new ratas. So these ratas are the units that can transform into other units. So if we take a look at trait number 8, we can see that that's checked here. And we can see, suspiciously, this trait piece has the ID of 1759. So this melee rata changes into 1759, which is the ranged rata. And then the melee version, or the elite version, changes into 1761, which corresponds to this one here. So let's try and add that sort of trait into our map over here. So let's try and change our eagle into a plumed archer. So plumed archer is 763. So if I say effect amount, set the attribute of eagle 1, which is the Eagle Scout, attr traits, set the value to 8, and then I can set the attribute, which is attr piece, to control which unit it will turn into. And I said I wanted that to be 763. And additionally, once it turns into a plumed archer, I want it to be able to turn back into Eagle Scout. So same thing I do here, set the traits value to 8, but I want to make sure that the plumed archer's piece attribute turns back into the Eagle Scout. So we can see that when we have those attributes set, this lovely little change weapon ability shows up. And when we do that, we can change from a plumed archer into an Eagle Scout and back and forth as much as we want. So that's pretty cool. Now, as far as I can tell, this ability to change combat mode into another unit is only available for military units. Trying to do it for units like villagers does not work as far as I can see. Now, I've brought my Eagle Scout to the middle of the map because I want to show something. So normally we should know that Eagle Scouts do not aggro predators because they're a scout unit. But when I hop over here into this den of jaguars, we can see that our Eagle Scout is now triggering the aggression for these predators. So why is that? And that's because, well, that has to do with the next trait, which is trait 16. So if we filter by A16, we can see that all of the units that contain trait 16 are scout type units. So if we remove this trait 16 from an Eagle Scout, remember we set it from trait number 16 to trait number 8, this changes it into a non-scout unit. So normally Eagle Scouts are not able to attack deers. This would not be the case here. And also removes the immunity to predators, which we just saw a second ago. But let's say we wanted to preserve this Eagle Scout's ability to, have immunity from predators. We could combine trait number 8, which is where we are right now, and add number 16. So 8 plus 16 is 24. So if I say the eagle now has trait number 24, we can see that it still preserves its ability to change into its transform unit at will. And when we hop into this pit of jaguars, we're still maintaining the scout unit's ability to be immune to predators. But then if we transfer over to the plumed archer did not have that trait 16 set, so it's still vulnerable to, the predators. So there's probably more applications for traits beyond what I've shown in this video, but as of now, I think that's going to be it for me. If I find out more, I may produce some follow-up content later, but in the meantime, thanks everybody for watching, and I'll see you next time.